Hello everyone, this is the Casual Fan. Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton. 8 points apart, 2 races left. That's one of the closest championships we've had in a while. Arguably, both Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen have performed at a level that if either of the two win the title, it's hard to say that they did not deserve it. In fact, barring a few dips here and there, the two drivers have performed at a very high level. But while there are many things that could be used to lionize the performance of these two drivers this season, there is one lingering question that most of the media might skirt around but not really answer. In this video, we try to answer that very question. Out of Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, who deserves the title more than the other? To do this, we have taken multiple factors into consideration and tried to form an opinion based on empirical evidence. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's find out who deserves the 2021 Drivers' title more than the other. Now, before you go ahead, why don't you first give your views on who you think is the more deserving driver in the comment section. Once that's done, let's go back to the video and find out who is the more deserving driver to win the 2021 Drivers' title. The most important aspect, more than anything else, if you want to succeed in Formula 1, is the machinery. It doesn't matter how good a driver you are, because if ultimately the car at your disposal is 1 second per lap slower than the fastest car on the grid, then you're not winning the title. Keeping that in mind, and to judge who has had the better machinery at their disposal, we have simply calculated the number of races each Mercedes and Red Bull have been more competitive in. And finally, on the basis of this, we have determined which car out of Red Bull and Mercedes has been the better machinery in 2021. Now, looking at the table, we can see how the form has fluctuated throughout the season, with Red Bull holding the edge at Bahrain before Mercedes went on a 3-race stretch from Imola to Barcelona, where it had the superior machinery before Red Bull pulled them back again at Monaco. However, after determining which car was more competitive at the respective races, we reached a rather surprising conclusion wherein both Red Bull and Mercedes have been the better machinery in 10 races each out of the total 20. What this proves is that until the Qatar Grand Prix, both Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have driven in cars that were equally competitive, and therefore neither of the two drivers hold an edge when it comes to the machinery they've had at their disposal. Both Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have put together some great qualifying laps throughout the year, and they have been pretty consistent as well. Max Verstappen has as many as 9 pole positions to his name, as compared to Lewis Hamilton, who has just 4. To dig deeper into the performances of the two drivers, we have calculated the average starting position of both the drivers after excluding the outliers like Russia, Turkey and Brazil, where either of the driver had to change their engines and incur a penalty. Now, after we did that, we found Max Verstappen having the average starting position of 2.0, while for Lewis Hamilton the same came out to be 2.5. Now, looking at this, first of all, we can see how close it is between the two championship contenders. Only a 0.5 difference in terms of the average starting point. It shows that there hasn't been much between two any stage in the season. But having said that, what this also signifies is that even though by a small margin of just 0.5, Max Verstappen has been the better qualifier this season. Now, after comparing the performance in qualifying, let's have a look at how the two drivers compare in the races. Max Verstappen has picked up 9 race wins this season, while Hamilton is not that far behind with as many as 7 wins to his name. Now, when we compare the average finishing position for both the drivers after excluding outliers like Baku, Britain, and others, where either of the two drivers either had a penalty or had a race changing incident, we find that Max Verstappen has an average finishing position of 1.2, while for Lewis Hamilton, that average finishing position is 2.2. Now, looking at these numbers, again, as expected, they are relatively close to each other. But what we can also see is that with the gap between the two widening from zero point 0.5 in qualifying to 1 in races, it specifies that Max Verstappen has been able to stretch his legs a bit in the races as compared to qualifying. And in a way, this does mean that Max Verstappen has been the better racer this season. Now, we come to the most subjective as well as probably the most contentious part of the analysis: the mistakes made by both the drivers. When we talk about Lewis Hamilton, the two glaring shortcomings that are the highlights of this season are the ones at Imola and the second one at Baku. While Hamilton was very lucky to escape relatively unscathed from his trip to the gravel at Imola, he did lose at least a podium at Baku because of the ruined restart because of the magic button. Other than these two, damaging the car by running over the curb at the Austrian Grand Prix cost Hamilton 6 more points, while an almost certain win at Hungary turned into a charge through the midfield because of a massive misjudgment on the part of both the driver and the team. Compare that to Max Verstappen, it's hard to find too many glaring mistakes from the driver throughout the season. Maybe the charge at Bahrain, where he was chasing down Lewis Hamilton, could have been better. Maybe he could have gotten out of the way of Hamilton at Silverstone and Monza, but all in all, the only glaring mistake, if any, on Max Verstappen's part has been the yellow flag infringement at Qatar that dropped him down the order. So, after analyzing the mistakes made by both the drivers, I feel it's not incorrect to conclude that Max Verstappen has made the lesser amount of mistakes as compared to Lewis Hamilton. In the world of Formula 1, luck has always played a part, and even this season, luck has played a role or two in the battle for the title. When you talk about Max Verstappen, it's fair to say that luck hasn't really been on his side. The puncture at Baku was sheer bad luck, and it cost Max 26 points. The accident at Silverstone, even if Max did have a role in it, saw Lewis Hamilton scrape through without virtually any damage and then win the race while Max ended up in the hospital for a concussion checkup. That's not all, as Max Verstappen, who was in P2 at Hungary, would get steamrolled by the wayward Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas and destroy another race. That itself is 3 races getting massively compromised because of no fault of his own. For sure, it has not all been dull and gloomy for Max, as his P2 finish in Russia had a share of luck involved. Also, the win at Spa could be considered hollow by many of the fans as well, because, let's be fair, there wasn't any racing. In all, if you do calculate the points lost versus the points gained because of luck throughout this season, you can see how much of a deficit has been imposed on Max by these unfortunate events. The ones, if they hadn't happened, would have resulted in Max already being the champion this season. On the other end of the spectrum, let's compare that to Lewis Hamilton, and you see a night and day difference when it comes to the fortunes of the two drivers. His trip to the gravel at Imola costed him virtually nothing because of the perfectly timed red flag. Neither did his entanglement with Max Verstappen at Silverstone that sent Max into a horrifying 52G crash. Did Hamilton lose out a bit at Spa? Probably yes, but predicting the result of an unpredictable wet race at Spa is probably not the most desirable thing. In the end, although, if we are comparing who has been the luckier of the two drivers, we might have to tilt towards Lewis Hamilton in that case. Now, after comparing both the drivers on different parameters like the machinery, their consistency, the luck factor, and the mistakes they've made all season, it does appear that the balance tilts towards Max Verstappen. He's had a similar machinery to Lewis Hamilton. He's been the more consistent driver both in qualifying and in the races. He's made the least mistakes and he's not had too much of luck on his side either. In the end, although yes, I would agree, the claim is going to be subjective to an extent, but in my view, Max Verstappen looks like the more deserving out of the two contenders. Having said that, the way the luck has been faring this season and looking at the momentum Lewis Hamilton has right now, I won't be surprised if Lewis Hamilton becomes an 8-time world champion at the end of the season. So these are my views. Do share what you guys think. Is it Max or is it Lewis Hamilton? Who is the more deserving of the world title out of these two? Do let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.